Hey everyone, and welcome to Isms by Josie. Today we're going to be doing another itty bitty knit kit from Five Below. For my returning subscribers, thank you so much for tuning in. And for my new viewers, please consider subscribing, share, hit that like button, leave a comment below, and click on that notification bell for future videos. So today, you guys, we're doing another itty bitty knit kit. We are going to be doing Lil Acorn. So in this kit, you get the stuffing, the needles, the felt stickers, a felt piece here, a plastic needle, and a couple of spools of yarn, as well as the instructions. This was a viewer request. If you have any requests, comment below, or if you don't want to wait for me to find the kit, you can always email me a clear image of the instructions. Okay, let's get straight into this. Let me show you the pouch. I'm going to take the contents out and then put them back in. But here are the needles. You want to check if there's any sharp pieces on the needles. You want to just file that down and buff it so that it's not sticking out. It could snag your yarn and just ruin your project. Here's the yarn. Oh, it's a felt sticker, this little leaf piece. Okay. And then the plastic needle. I'm just going to put the stuffing back in because you don't want to get it dirty. Same thing goes for the felt stickers, and then the needle, we're not going to use it and you don't want to lose it. So we're going to put that in there. Alright, for the instructions, it does show you illustrations and text on how to do everything that you needed to use to complete the project. You can follow this, or you can follow this video. I just show how to do the one stitch that this project uses, and I'll do it 3 times step by step. And then of course, if there's other parts of the instruction that I think need a little bit more explanation or exemplification, I will do that. But otherwise, if you do want to get this kit or make this acorn, I highly recommend that you get the kit either online or at your local Five Below. The cool thing about this kit is that it also comes with a ruler. This is highly dependent on actual measurements, so keep that in mind when you're making this project or any of these itty bitty knit kit projects. You really want to make it to size so that when you sew the pieces together, the proportions are right and it doesn't look different from what they have done. Alright, so let me just file these down real quick and I'll be right back. Alright, so it looks like we're doing 3 rectangles. Not too bad. I'm going to be doing the first 2, and then the third one I'm going to do off camera, just because by that point you should be able to either rewind back to help you start it, or it'll probably be good enough for you to do on your own. But yeah, so we're going to start with the green here. I like it when they give you the bigger spools, because then you can just go in, find the other end. We got lucky, it just sticks out right here. It's easier to pull from the inside of the spool, because then you just put a little bit of paperweight and you pull this and it's not going to roll around. If you go and pick the other end, if you find it on the outside, you'll have to remove this, and when you pull it, it's going to roll around everywhere. Alright, so off camera, I'm going to go measure with the ruler in the instructions the amount of tail they're asking you to have. I'm doing it off camera because I don't want to have to show the instructions. That will be a copyright issue. Alright, so I measured out the tail with my left hand, because this video is for righty. I'm going to show you the amount of tail that I have. You want to keep your tail out of the way, so I'm going to put this down and drape it over my table. Then this part here attached to the spool is called the feeder yarn. We're just going to hold this up out of the way. You don't want the two to cross to where you mix it up and you accidentally start knitting with the tail, because then obviously you're going to run out very quick. I've done that. So from here, I'm going to show you how to do a cast on to the needle. So hold this very tightly. We're going to take our middle finger and ring finger, and we're going to hold this a bit apart. Oh, and by the way, I usually mention this and I forget. There's a gear button at the corner of the screen. You can click on that and you can make the video fast or slow. So there's a playback option to go fast or slow. If you don't need to hear me talk, you can lower the volume on the device, and then there's a CC closed caption button. Alright, so we're holding this apart. This is very tight. This can be loose. You're going to take your two fingers. We're going to lift this up here, and then we're going to turn it down to create a loop. And then with the middle finger and index finger, we're going to grab the feeder yarn and pull it through that loop to create a huge knot. Okay, so now we just have to close this knot. We're going to push it down towards your left thumb there, and to do that we're going to pull the top part of this loop. You don't want to pull the part that's attached to the feeder yarn, so we're going to pull this top part here. So do that now, and then at the same time just push that knot towards the left thumb. That's going to minimize the amount of waste that you have between the tail and the knot. So the idea is to get as close as possible. If you don't, which lately I have been missing. So this is the amount of waste that I'm making. So that's not too bad. And then from here you can just pull out the tail. Tighten up that knot a little bit more. You don't have to pull it too tightly. But now we have this huge loop. Alright, so we have to make this loop more manageable for 2 knitting needles. So what you want to do is pull the feeder yarn and pull it until that loop is big enough to fit 2 knitting needles. And then you can always pull some more or loosen it up if the loop if this little loop here is not fitting very well. I'm just going to tighten this up, and then we can start on our project. So take some of this feeder yarn. I do this a lot. I mean, there's a daintier way that the book shows it, but I don't do it that way. So you can choose what you want to do. Alright, so from here we've got to get into our knitting knit stitch position. So these kits only do knit stitches, which is, you know, easy because it's one stitch you have to learn. Also, once you learn this one stitch, you can use it on any other project you can think of out of your head. You know, like you can make a table runner, you can make a scarf, you can make pot holders. You know, sky's the limit, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, so let's learn how to do this knit stitch. We're going to do the knit stitch to cast on more stitches. So at this point here, we have to make sure we get the number of stitches that the instructions say. So again, I'm going to do this step by step 3 times, and then you can replay it or pause it or whatever you want to do after that. So what we're going to do is cross our needles in an X. And for a knit stitch right-handed, you want to put the right needle in the back and then the left needle on top. And then we're going to have our feeder yarn in the back. Okay, so you don't want any of this. You don't want your needles to be flipped, because that's a completely different stitch altogether. This is a different stitch altogether. We're going to keep this in the back, the right in the back. Alright, so we're here. This is our knitting knit stitch position. So from here, we're going to take the feeder yarn and we're going to wrap it around the right needle. You always want to keep your needles touching. So if we do a close-up, there's going to be a very tiny spot that's always going to touch the needle. And you need this connection, because if you didn't and it was split apart like that, they had a gap, you're going to lose your feeder yarn or your stitches. You know, it could easily happen. So always keep contact with your needles. Alright, so we're going to wrap the feeder yarn around the right needle. We're going to go from back to forward And then we're going to move this down. You're going to either feel or hear a snap because we're touching needles. So we're going to pull this down so that I felt it snap. You want that feeder yarn in this little crevice here, this little gap. And you still want to maintain the contact between your two needles so that you don't lose this feeder yarn. Alright, so from here we're going to slide the left needle down the right needle and down its back, maintaining that contact, because that's going to force the feeder yarn to go through this loop. So let me show you. We're going to slide this down over the right needle and down its back, and the point is supposedly forcing that needle. I can't do it slow. All right, let's do it faster. But yeah, so we are here in this position. Let's do this again. We've wrapped it around the right needle, back to forward and down. You're going to hear or feel it snap. Then we're going to slide the left needle down the right needle and down its back. And it's going to push that yarn through that loop, okay, creating a new stitch. So now you have a stitch on the left, a stitch on the right. So to cast on new stitches, we have to just transfer over the new stitch onto the left needle. To do that, you're going to grab your left needle and poke that through the new stitch on your right needle. We're going to go through and we're going to pick it up and lift it off the right needle completely. And so now you just have 2 stitches on your left needle. So let's do this again. We're going to stick our right needle into this new stitch now. We're going to get into our knit stitch position, which is an X, the right needle in the back or bottom, the left needle on top. Maintain contact. We're going to wrap the feeder yarn around the right needle, back to front and down. You're going to feel or hear it snap. Okay. Into this little space here. Then we're going to slide the left needle down the right needle and down its back, forcing that feeder yarn through the loop like this. And you're going to keep pushing that in there, creating a new stitch on the right needle. And to cast on stitches, we have to just transfer the right stitch, the stitch on the right needle over to the left. So take your left needle and stick it into that new stitch all the way through. We're going to lift it off the right needle, and now we have 3 stitches on our left needle. All right, so let me show you this one more time, you guys. Stick your needle into the new stitch like we did before. Okay, we're going to get into our knit stitch position, which is an X. Right needle on the bottom, left needle on top, feeder yarn in the back. We're going to wrap the feeder yarn around the right needle from back to forward, maintaining contact. We're going to push this down. You're going to feel or hear it snap. Getting into this little crevice here. Then we're going to slide the left needle down the right needle and down its back, and that's going to force the feeder yarn through the loop, creating a new stitch on the right needle. To cast on stitches, we just have to transfer the stitch on the right needle over to the left. So take your left needle and just stick that through the new stitch. We're going to lift it off the right needle and completely off it. So now we have 4 stitches. Alright, so from here, you guys, you can either rewind until you feel comfortable casting on stitches on your own, but I'm going to move forward and complete the number of stitches that the instructions ask me to do, and then I'll pop back in and I'll show you guys what to do next. Alright, so I completed the number of stitches required for this rectangle. Now, in the instruction, it tells you how long you have to make it, which is why they provide you with a ruler. So they do give you a number of rows that it's going to take to make that length, but because everyone is different and everyone makes their stitches either too big or too tight or, what have you, the number of row of stitches may not necessarily make the measurement requirement for that square. So what I would do is just keep doing these rows that I'm going to teach you to do until you measure the size of the square using the ruler that the instructions ask you to do. I think that's the safest bet, again, because when we sew these pieces together, you want the proportions to be right, or at least the same as the instructions, because then otherwise you might either have difficulty putting the pieces together or difficulty just kind of making sure it looks right because the proportions are off. So this is what we're going to do next, and this, after you learn this part, you're going to be able to complete the whole thing without me, or you can watch along. So we're basically going to do the same stitch that we just did. It's just going to be a little different because we're no longer casting on stitches, we're actually doing rows. So you want to take your needle and stick that into the first stitch here, and we're going to get into our knit stitch position like this, maintain contact with our needles. We're going to do what we've been doing, and I'll show you this 3 times. So we're going to wrap the feeder yarn around the right needle. We're going to go back to forward and down. You're going to feel or hear it snap. Get it into this little crevice here. Then we're going to slide the left needle down the right needle and down its back. That's going to force the feeder yarn through the loop, creating a new stitch like that. So rather than transfer the stitch on the right needle over to the left like we did, we're going to lose a stitch on the left needle. So for these instructions, the number of stitches that you have on this needle, you have to have the same number on this needle. Okay, so when I say that, we just created a stitch, now we have to lose a stitch. So again, this is specific to the instruction, to this project. It might not be the same for any other, projects you do. Okay, so again, this stitch that we used, just slide it off the left. Gone. Scary, but we're good because we have this one here. This stitch replaced that one we just dropped. So let's do this again. Stick your right needle into the next stitch here. Get into your knit stitch position. We're going to go wrap the feeder yarn around the right needle, maintaining contact. We're going to go back to front and down. You're going to feel or hear it snap. That time was a snap, Anna. You can feel it snap. All right, so in this crevice here, now we're going to slide the left needle down the right needle and down its back. It's going to force the feeder yarn through that loop, creating a new stitch. So now we can drop this stitch on the left needle. So carefully slide it off. You don't want to lose any other stitch other than this one. So now you have 2 new stitches on the right, 2 less stitches on the left. Alright, so one more time, you guys. Stick your needle into the next stitch. Get into your knit stitch position. Maintain contact with your needles. We're going to go back to forward and then down. You're going to feel or hear it snap. Get it into that crevice. We're going to slide the left needle down the right needle and then down its back, forcing that feeder yarn through the loop, creating a new stitch. So now you can lose this stitch off the left needle. Alright, so now we have 3 new stitches on the right, 3 less stitches on the left. So we're just going to keep repeating that until there's no more stitches on the left needle, and then I'll show you what to do next. but you can just rewind the video and until you feel comfortable doing this on your own, but I'm just going to continue the rest here. Alright, so I've gone through the row. Now we have a situation because now all our stitches, which should be the same number that we started with, is on the right needle. So what do we do from here? We have an empty left. Whenever you do a row and you're right-handed, you should start with your stitches on your left. So what we're just going to do is switch needles. You're going to take your left needle, put it over to your right. Then you're going to take your right needle and we're just going to flip it over onto our left. Now, as I'm doing this, you can see that this feeder yarn was just flapping in the wind here. It has a tendency to go up, and you see what it's doing here. So, little tip, if we have our stitches that look like this normally, and without paying attention, this could happen. So you have to pay attention. If your feeder yarn ends up going up, it's now kind of creating two loops, doesn't it? If you weren't paying attention and you just said, okay, let's start the next row, you're going to think that you have two stitches here, you're going to knit into them, and you're going to grow your project. That's something that I've done when I was learning how to knit. So what you want to do is when you do start a new row, make sure that your project is growing downward. If this is up, you're going to see a little twist. You might not see it as bad now because it's just it's just one row that we did. As it grows, you're going to see a bigger twist. So you'll see it, but right from the get-go, we want to do it right. So make sure that you just, whenever you flip over your needle, you make sure that this little line here is straight as possible. That also means your feeder yarn. You want your feeder yarn to be down and back, not up and back. So keep that feeder yarn down. You can untwist this now by just making sure it lines up with all the stitches. You can kind of, the first row might be difficult because it's always going to be wonky no matter how many years you've been doing this. But if you look closely, you can see the row here. These stitches, just make sure they're all in a row. Okay, you're going to follow a line. And that's how you make sure it's not bunching or twisting. Alright, so from here, I'll do 3, even though I think at this point you already know what to do, but just in case, I'm going to do 3 more stitches with you guys doing a new row because we just flipped. We can pick up this left needle, which is now our right needle, and we can start this all over again, just like we did with the last row. So you're just going to stick your needle into this first stitch here, get into your knit stitch position, and we're going to knit this first stitch, okay, creating a new stitch. So we're going to lose this stitch on the left because we have to keep the same number of stitches we started with onto the right. So this is 1 stitch here minus 1 stitch here. Let's do this again 2 more times with you guys. Do a knit stitch, gained a stitch on the right, we're going to lose another stitch on the left. So we have 2 stitches here and we have minus 2 stitches on the left. So one more time with you guys, stick your needle into the next stitch. We're going to do our knit stitch. Then we're gonna, we have gained 1 stitch here, we're gonna lose a stitch on the left. So now we have 3 new stitches on the right, minus 3 stitches on the left. So again, you guys, I'm gonna complete this over and over again until I reach the size square the instructions are asking, and I'm gonna use the ruler to do so. Again, everyone has their own tight stitches, loose stitches. Until you can get them all uniform, it's going to be different. But yeah, I would go with the length of the measurement and not necessarily the amount of rows they tell you to do. But sometimes it works out good where the number of rows does end up being the size square, but you just never know. Alright, so I'm nearly there to the size square from the instructions, and I'm going to show you now how to cast off your needles. I mean your stitches. Oof. Yeah. I'm just going to gather up some feeder yarn. So what we're going to do is we're going to do 2 knit stitches. Okay, 1, 2. So from here we're going to take the first stitch here, pick it up with our left. We're going to lift it up and leapfrog it over the next stitch here. So let's do that now. It might be a little tight, but just try to make it work. Now with this stitch we just leaped over, you can use your thumb, your fingernail, whatever, to hold it down so you don't lose it, because we're just going to lift this first stitch off the right needle. Okay, just be careful you don't lose that second one. So once you lift it off the right needle, you're just going to remove it off the left needle. So now we have 1 stitch left on our right needle, and we have -2 on the left needle, and we just got to keep doing that until we have no more stitches on our left needle. So to do that, we're going to do another knit stitch from here. So do a knit stitch. So we're back to 2 stitches on our right needle. You're going to pick up this stitch and we're going to leapfrog it over the next one. Use your thumb or your nail to hold that stitch down while we take this stitch off the right needle and then off the left needle. So now we're left with 1 again. So one more time with you guys. Do a knit stitch. You have 2 stitches on your right needle again. Lift this stitch up. We're going to leapfrog it over the next one. Use your thumb or your nail to hold it down while we remove this stitch off the right needle and then off the left needle. So you can rewind this part until you're comfortable doing these stitches on your own. I'm just going to continue and go through all these stitches, and then when we're left with 1 stitch left on the right needle, I'll show you how to deal with that. Alright, so we're down to our last stitch here. What I'm going to do, because we don't really need this yarn anymore, I'm going to cut about 1 inch or so, and we're going to yarn over the feeder yarn. So yarn over your knitting needle. We're going to take this empty one here, and we're just going to lift this stitch up over the yarn over, carefully off the right needle and off the left needle. Then I'm going to pull the right needle so that that feeder yarn goes all the way out. And then we're going to pull that feeder yarn until that loop is tight. And then we're done with this square. Alright, you guys, so we completed this one. Let's do the next one. I'm just going to set this aside. We have our brown yarn here. This is going to be the acorn top. Right, and I don't really like when it's like this. It just makes it messy. I mean, you could unravel it all and put it into a ball, or if you have a spool machine, that'll fix it to where it doesn't roll all over the place. But I'm just going to leave this as is and try to work with it. Alright, so off camera, I'm going to measure out the tail that I'll need in this color. Okay, so I have the tail length that I need, and I'm going to drape this down over my desk here towards the bottom, and then the feeder yarn I'm going to leave towards the top so that they're separated. Keeping this pinch pretty tight, I'm going to take my middle and ring finger and hold the yarn apart. We're then going to take our two fingers here and lift up on the yarn, twist down to create this loop. Then I'm going to take my index and middle finger and grab the feeder yarn, pull it through that huge loop, creating a knot. And from here, what you want to do is push this knot towards your left thumb. This will close the knot tighter, and then you want to pull from the top side, not the bottom side that's attached to the feeder yarn. So again, this is going to make sure that you have minimal waste. So just try to get that loop as close to your left thumb as possible and keep pulling on that yarn. Once you get to a stopping point, then what we're going to do is take our tail and pull on that just to tighten up that knot a little bit more. Okay. And then we're going to deal with this large loop. So we want it to be more manageable for 2 knitting needles. So I'm going to take the feeder yarn and pull on it to make this loop a lot smaller. You want to be able to fit 2 needles in that loop. You can loosen it up or tighten it as much as you need to, because we're then going to start our casting on. So I'm going to just gather up some feeder yarn here. So the instructions call for a certain number of stitches, so we're going to cast on that amount. It also says the size rectangle it needs to be. So again, they do provide the number of rows, but just measure it twice just to make sure that you have the same size rectangle that they're using. Alright, so like we did before, we're just going to be casting on these stitches using that basic knit stitch. We just transfer the new stitches over to the other side. So this is just going to be a quick refresher. If you do have to go back, I would do that now, but at this point it's basically the same stitch we've been doing. It's just when you cast on stitches, rather than leave it on the right needle, you're just going to transfer it over to the left needle. So since we've done this before, like I said, this is going to be the second rectangle I am doing on camera, because it's just a different color. This is pretty much the same techniques we've been doing from the last square, and it'll be the same techniques that we're doing for the third and final square. That one I'm going to do off camera. I just wanted to show the different colors so that, you know, you have an idea of what this thing is looking like. So I'm going to do the rest here in silence. I'll come back in to cast off and go over it again just one more time with you guys. And then I'll be doing the third square off camera. Alright, so I'm going to show you guys how to cast off again. We're going to knit 2 stitches, and then we're going to leapfrog this first one over the next, off the right needle and off the left, knit another stitch, then we're going to lift this stitch, leapfrog it over the next, off the right needle, off the left, then one more, knit another stitch, leapfrog this stitch over the next, off the right and off the left. Right, so just repeat this again as many times as you need to get comfortable with casting off. And I'm going to show you once we get down the line what to do with the last stitch again. Okay, we've done every single stitch on the left needle. We have this one left. I'm just going to cut about 1 inch or so from the feeder yarn. And then we're going to yarn over with the feeder yarn. Take your left needle, leapfrog this stitch over the yarn over, and then off the right and off the left. Then I'm going to pull this right needle to pull that feeder yarn all the way out, and then tighten it up, and we finished our second square. So now you should be able to do the last one on your own. I'm going to film it off camera, and then when we come back in, we're going to start sewing everything together. So I have my squares. Now we have to sew it together. So we're going to take the plastic needle out, and let's see, so we're going to fold a green corner to meet the bottom corner. We're going to sew the edges of the triangle together. Alright, so we have to flip this inside out? Yeah, I don't know why they don't. In the first kits I did, it tells you to put the prettier side on the inside, and most of these don't tell you that anymore until it's too late, I feel. So to look at your square, pick the side that looks the prettiest, and I don't know if you can see it, but where we started there's this line that stands out, so I'm just gonna flip it over and call this side the prettier side, and we want that on the inside. So you want to take your triangle and fold it over with the good side on the inside. And then I'm going to take my thread here, our yarn, and thread the needle. I wonder what's best. Let me see, because we're gonna have to leave a gap, and it has you leaving a gap here. So I wonder if I fold down with the tail on this side, I can sew it up, come down, sew it, skip, sew it. There's a lot of ways you can do this. Let's see if I do it this way. I can sew, skip, sew. It's the same thing really. Alright, so I'm just going to start with like this with the tail on the right corner. Right, and then we're going to sew the edges together and we're just going to go around it. Not straight stitches, but I'll show you. So line it up as best you can, but we're just going to sew around the edge like this, going over the edge with the yarn. Okay, and we're going to leave a gap to put the stuffing. So how we're going to do that is you can just go in and out these rows on one side only. Don't do both of them, just one side, until you get to a good amount of opening for your stuffing. Okay, and then we can go back and sew around the edge. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is sew down this other edge. The spacing could be a little bit wider because I'm going to come back down. So you can skip a couple of rows or stitches because we're going to trail back anyway. And this is going to help take your tail a lot farther. If you doubled up on tight stitching, you're using more yarn, so you might run out. Oh, we're supposed to sew. Oh my gosh. Oy, 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 oy. We're gonna need more anyway because this wasn't enough, but we have to sew the we have to round the corners. But maybe I can, after I sew the gap. No, we have to flip it inside out. Alright, let me see if I can get this done. Man, I just totally led you in the wrong direction. Sorry, guys. But they made that line so faint. I mean, use a red. Anyway. Alright, so we got down here. I'm not going to finish this corner because we're going to round the edge. Alright, like this. So we just have to cut that corner short. Okay, and then we can go back around. And we're going to go down this edge again. Okay, if you can see where your stitching was, you can at least go in between those stitches. I'm going to try to go back around here. Yeah, I'm just going to have to get some more green yarn to finish up that other rounded edge. And see, it's not even enough to sew this close, which is crazy. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to tie a knot here. Because there's not enough. And I'm going to grab more green yarn. And we're going to finish the other rounded edge and sew the pieces together. But I'm going to just double knot this. So this is the first time that's happened though. You've seen my videos where we do go one side and then back because we have to have this gap in the dead middle of the project. And I've never needed to get more yarn, but there's always a first for anything. And so at least now we can just take this green here. Okay. Gonna cut this. And I'm just gonna right away start at the corner so we can curve it. And just put it through one way here. We're just gonna tie that 2 times to secure it. Then we're just gonna go in and out. Okay, and then once we get around there, we're going to go around the edge till we hit that opening, because we have to flip this inside out. And then we're going to stuff it, because we want to show that prettier side. Okay, so now that I'm back here where the opening is, I'm just going to go now and flip this inside out. The corners are going to be rounded, or somewhat rounded. Okay, and then we can take our stuffing. Alright, so I have my stuffing. I don't think this is going to be enough, you guys. Alright, so I'm just going to split this because we have to have some for the cap, but we also need some for the acorn. So I'm going to fill this in, and we can distribute it out after we close this, but I'm going to take the needle now, and we're just going to close the edge. Okay, and once we get to the other side and close that gap, I'm just gonna find my moment to tie a knot. Okay. Then with the needle, I'm going to go in one spot here and come out a random spot somewhere, anywhere, and pull it all the way out. And then make sure this isn't dimpling. You want to stretch this. But what you want to do is, if this is too long, cut just above the surface. Okay, and then to hide the end, you can just squish it. You can also take this time to manipulate the stuffing to even out the acorn. This sew job is just, I'm not a sewer, so it looks like a triangle when it's supposed to look like something round. Anyway, and then we're gonna start putting the cap together using the second rectangle. Alright, so let's take this long rectangle here. We're going to fold the good side in. So fold it in half. You know, I'm going to flip this upside down here, because let's thread this up. Alright. We have to sew like up here. We're going to round the corner go across and then round the corner again, and we're going to leave this open to fill and sew together. I think I'm going to do straight stitches. So straight stitching is just going up and down. I mean, I don't even know if that's what you'd call it. I'm not a sewer, but I'm going to round off this corner. Right, and then I'm going to just sew along the edge here. Right, and then when we get to this corner, we're just going to round this corner. All right. And then we have to flip this inside out. So now we have our rounded cap. We're going to put the stuffing in here, and then we're going to sew the cap around the acorn. So I'm going to try to hide these unsightly corners. I'm going to try to, you know, kind of, you know what I mean? Like one of those. I don't know if it's possible. Let me see. I'm just going to grab this here. Try to pull it up to the edge. And again, I'm not a sewer. I'm just trying to make this look right, because it's looking a little off. It's looking a lot off. And my sewing skills aren't the best. But so that's what you just want to do. You want to sew around this cap to attach it on here. So try not to sew into the stuffing. All right, and then once I get all the way around, I'm gonna then find a moment to tie a knot. Then I'm going to go in one spot and out a random spot. And then we're going to cut this flush. Squeeze it until that tail is hidden. Yeah, getting there. I mean, it's not perfect, but oh, all right. Okay, and then last but not least, we're going to sew this stem together. So we're gonna fold this in half. Again, look for the good side. I mean, it's so small at this point. Who knows what the good side is really? And then we have to sew around the edge, rounding the tops. And this doesn't require stuffing, so we're good. But I am going to take that one end here. If you have a little end from casting off, we're just going to tuck this into our fold. And I'm going to kind of try to go back around. We're going to do straight stitching. So I'm going to start the bottom here, and we're going to go up and we're going to round the top. But I'm going to come back down because we have to sew this together to the cap. So we are working small, so hopefully you guys are able to do that and don't necessarily need to see exactly what I'm doing, because this is a tiny piece. I'm not a fan of working with tiny pieces. But yeah, we're going to round the edge. Oh, we have to flip this inside out. Ugh, I forgot about that. All right. We might not have to go back around. We're going to do it. We're going to trail it through. So round the top like it says. We're going to flip this inside out, and it should be rounded on the top. And we're just going to, so I didn't have to tuck this in, goodness gracious. Ooh. Well, you can always string this through the other side, and I pierce the yarn. All right, fix that. So it is on the outside now, but you can always just slip this. I'm even going to cut this a bit too to even this out because I totally screwed it up. All right, thread the piece you're supposed to, if you did what I did, steering you in the wrong direction again, you can just thread it up, stick it on the top of the stem here, and come out from the inside of that stem and pull all the way out, and then you're good to go. You can then tuck that end into the stem like we were supposed to do on the wrong side, not on the good side. And then rethread this up, because now we're going to sew this onto the cap. I'm just going to go and because it's where we left off, somewhere in here, right? So you just want to bring this yarn back to the level of the bottom edge of the stem so that we can start sewing it. So stick this on here. You can put it on the center. Try to find your best center here, close to it. And then we're going to sew this on. I mean, how I'm going to sew it on, I don't know. I'm just going to go in and out of this sucker again. I'm really not that great in sewing. But you just want to do well enough to secure your stem onto your cap. So, however you do it, I guess. Oh goodness. Now once you're back around, just pull this through. I'm going to tie my knot. Then you're going to stick the needle into a spot close by here, and then out some random spot on the other side. Okay, and then just cut the I want to see if I can make this disappear, but if not, if it's too long, just trim it. I'm going to trim this then. I tried to hide the whole thing just because there's not enough stuffing on here. Not that a little piece of yarn is going to make any difference, but anyway. All right, so we've got our acorn. I can imagine we have to find the prettier side to do this now. So it looks like he has a little hat. How cute. Okay, I'm going to use this side. This side looks a little, you know, like he's got some serious cheekbones going on. That's a bad thing. But I'm just going to use this side. Okay, and I'm going to take the eyes here. Oh, there's a mouth on here. So let's start with the eyes, or start with the mouth actually, because then you can find your center. And once you find your center, it's easier to place the eyes. So grab the mouth, and we're going to place this where we want Mr. Smiley here to smile. Now this is such a small piece, so just press down on it and hold on for a few seconds, applying that pressure. We want the adhesive to really stick to every fringe, every piece of yarn possible, and that will help it stick. If you don't trust that, you intend on washing this, I would go in with some fine thread and a needle and just sew. I mean, but it's going to be impossible, but that's pretty much what the instructions tell you, or at least that's what most of these instructions have been saying to do. These kits are the first time I've just used stickers to make the face. It's usually safety eyes I get in the other kits from other companies, but this one actually uses stickers. So now I'm going to place my eyes, and oh my gosh, look how cute that is. Again, we're just going to hold this down for a few seconds, make sure that adhesive is really stuck on there. And I don't wash these, I mean, I just make them for the videos, so I don't know how long the adhesive is going to stick for. So I can't tell you that. But now we're just going to place the other eye, and you just want to make sure that it's close to even. Got to look at a lot of things. Eye level, eye distance, from distance to the mouth, the angles of the little blush. I mean, it can be off, it doesn't have to be perfect, but at least just try to make it even so it doesn't look too silly. Okay. And then, last but not least, we're going to stick on this leaf. And this is tinier than I thought it would be looking at the photo. And there's a little perforated stripe that you have to remove, which is a little annoying because it doesn't want to separate that easy. Okay. And then we're just sticking this randomly on the cap. What looks like a feather, but it's a leaf, right? And again, squish it down, make sure that it really gets stuck on there. And we are about done. So this is the material that I have left. I really ran out of that brown, but not enough to where it was bad. I still was able to make all the pieces. Comment below, let me know if you have material left. I'm always curious because I feel like lately that it's been getting pretty tighter with the material. But here you go, you guys. This is what it's supposed to look like. my Lil Acorn. This is really cute. Alright, so thank you so much, you guys. I wanted to mention sooner rather than later. I've been mentioning this in every video that I have, that there is a special giveaway that I am throwing on my original channel. And I wanted to share it with you guys because I am offering, aside from the goodies, a gift card. I'm also offering an hour session. So if you need help with any projects that you're working on that are stuck on, or if you want to basically learn one-on-one how to knit or crochet, or if you're inspired to start a channel or currently have a channel and need some advice, we can use that hour to do that. It's via StreamYard. You can look that up. Basically, you set up your phone like this, so you don't have to show faces or anything like that. But we can go over any projects that you're working on or talk about whatever, you know, the stuff that I just mentioned. But yeah, so I wanted to do that. And then, so I have some requests right now. I think my list is about now 4 deep. There's more to come after that, but I've been backlogged with some of these requests because of the Halloween season. So again, if you have any requests, comment below, or if you don't want to wait for me to find the kit, I would suggest taking clear images and sending them to me via email. My info is in this. My info for my contact info is in the description box, along with the rules and link to my original channel. So check that out. What else? I feel like I'm missing something. Oh, yeah. So and I can't share instructions. I can't tell you numbers or anything like that. I get a lot of requests for that, and I understand like some of the comments. I really do, but I mean, myself or anyone actually can't just share instructions, because I will get in trouble, they will get in trouble. So you know, for those that want to post the instructions in the comments, I highly wouldn't recommend it, because you know, you don't want to get in trouble as well. So anyway, all right, you guys, thank you so much for watching. This is Isms by Josie. Please share, like, and subscribe for future videos, and I'll see you again next time. Thanks. Bye.